I know this isn't the season of Mark, but today we are working with one of Mark's scriptures that, interestingly enough, doesn't ever appear in the lectionary. A lot of you know that I like to preach from the lectionary because it's good discipline. Those are the prescribed scriptures for the different Sundays through year A, B, and C. Now this year we've been finishing up Luke, which means the new year we will go into Matthew. This is Mark. This is would have been from 2 years ago. But this scripture I have never preached on, and it rarely ever have you heard perhaps others preach on. Reading from Mark, chapter 9, beginning with verse 14. And if you'd like to read along with me, please read along in your pew Bible. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them, and some scribes arguing with them. When the whole crowd saw him, they were immediately overcome with awe, and they ran forward to greet him. He asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" Someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams, and he grinds his teeth, and he becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they couldn't do it." He answered them, "You faithless generation, how much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him, and when the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy and fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. It has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us." If you are able, all things can be done for one who believes. Immediately, the father of the child cried out, "I believe! Help my unbelief!" And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together when the man cried out, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You spirit that keeps this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he was able to stand. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "This kind can come out only through prayer." Thus ends the reading of the word. Thank you, God. All right, I put the manuscript over there. I spent weeks on it. So we're just going to do what I always do, and I want to run this story by you. We have to get our position. Pretend we're in my movie, okay? Pretend that Mark is this fabulous cinematographer, and he has put together this incredible piece of literature, this incredible story that is so graphic, you need to turn your eyes to the big screen. Picture this. The first line of the text. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and some scribes arguing with them. So you see this screen of a great crowd and disciples, but who's they that came? Flashback, time for the flashback. Immediately, in the verses preceding this, Jesus, James, John, and Peter were up on the mount of where Jesus was transfigured. So we flash back to that mountaintop. We flash back to Peter, James, and John witnessing Jesus' transfiguration in the company of Elijah and Moses. We flash back to that moment in time when Peter, James, and John heard the voice come from the overshadowing cloud my beloved. This is my son. Listen to him. They were terrified, and they were shaken down to their very toenails. And when they were done with this incredible experience, they're hiking down the mountain. The four. Picture them like, well, the brothers Burr, Morgan, and Virgil, and Wyatt, along with Doc Holliday, marching into this scene where the crowd and the remnant disciples are arguing. And the four who come upon this crowd are amazed to see what's going on. And what's interesting is I picture, since the crowd suddenly is distracted, and they see Jesus, and they turn to Jesus, and it says, in the text it says, when the whole crowd saw him, when they saw Jesus, they were immediately overcome with awe. Well, my guess is that he must have brought some of that bleached white transfiguration radiance down the mountain with him. Sort of like Moses when he had his face-to-face with God in former days and had that incredible shiny sunburn and had to wear a veil. So here's the crowd seeing Jesus, seeing this radiance, and they are immediately distracted from this argument. Jesus asks them all, okay, what is going on here? What are you all arguing about? And before the poor disciples can even open their mouths to begin to make their excuses and explain why they've been in this dispute, this kind of tattletale voice comes from out of the crowd and says, "Teacher, I brought you my son." This is it. This is the whole thing. This is the whole cause of the dispute. "Teacher, I brought you my son." What is going on here? Here is this man in this crowd. We don't know anything about him. "Teacher, I brought you my son." He goes into this graphic description, this incredible description. It says he has this spirit that makes it so he can't speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him on the ground, and he seizes it, and he becomes rigid, and he foams at the mouth, and I brought him to your disciples. See, and what's unspoken here is the only reason I brought him to his disciples is because you were